When you look at the photographs taken in London during the first week of December 1952, the first thing you notice is that there's nothing to see. Just white. A wall of white where a city of 8 million people should be. It didn't announce itself. No siren, no explosion, no visible threat. Just fog. The kind London had always had. The kind that showed up in Dickens novels and tourist postcards, and the general mythology of a city that had learned to live with gray. People went to work. Children went to school. The buses ran, for a while. Nobody understood that the air they were breathing was already killing them. Not a war, not a plague. 5 days of ordinary coal smoke with nowhere to go. Here's what the weather map showed and what nobody explained to the public. For 3 days prior, an anticyclone had settled over the Thames Valley like a lid on a pot. Cold air normally rises, carrying smoke and sulfur dioxide upward and away. But when a high-pressure system parks itself overhead, that exchange stops. Warm air near the ground gets trapped beneath a ceiling of cold air above, a thermal inversion. London was sealed. Everything the city burned, roughly 1,000 tons of coal per day from domestic fireplaces alone, plus Battersea and Bankside power stations running at full capacity, had nowhere to go. The sky above was clear and cold and completely indifferent. The trap below was filling by the hour. This wasn't London's first bad fog. The city had been choking on its own air since the Industrial Revolution turned every chimney into a vent for unfiltered combustion. In 1873, a fog lasting 4 days sent the death rate 40% above normal. In 1948, another event killed hundreds. Each time the government noted it, filed it, and moved on. Coal was too important to confront. The economy ran on it. The post-war rebuilding ran on it. Homes ran on it. The idea that this particular Friday in December would be different, that the weather would hold just long enough, that the pollution would concentrate just heavily enough, was the kind of risk that only looks inevitable in retrospect. By the morning of December 5th, the fog had a texture people hadn't encountered before. It was yellow. Some described it as greenish. It smelled faintly of coal tar and something else. Something chemical. Something that caught at the back of the throat in a way that felt wrong rather than merely unpleasant. A bus driver in Lambeth described stopping his vehicle and opening the cab door to check whether he'd reached the stop. He hadn't. He couldn't tell. The chemistry was quiet and methodical. Sulfur dioxide from burning coal reacted with moisture in the fog and oxidized into sulfuric acid droplets, the same acid that eats through metal. The particles were small enough to bypass the nose and throat entirely and travel deep into lung tissue, where they began destroying the lining from the inside. You couldn't taste it. You couldn't always smell it at those concentrations, but your lungs knew within hours. Measurements taken at monitoring stations across the city later showed sulfur dioxide levels reaching 8 times the normal background. The particulate count was so dense the instruments at some stations stopped working, clogged with the same material that was entering people's airways. By Saturday morning, visibility in parts of the East End had dropped to 5 yards. Not 5 meters, 5 yards. A man walking home from work in Stepney navigated by touching the wall of each building with his fingertips. Block by block, 40 minutes to cover a distance he normally walked in 8. Buses were abandoned mid-route, drivers unable to see the curb. Cattle at Smithfield Market, prize animals brought to London for an agricultural show, began to suffocate. Veterinarians administered oxygen. 12 animals died before the show was canceled. One farmer described the smell in the pens as like standing inside a burning chimney that had been sealed shut. The smog didn't stay outside. That's the part the official reports kept understating. It crept through window frames, under doors, through fireplace vents. In cinemas, the projector beam became visible as a yellow-gray column cutting through the auditorium. At Sadler's Wells, a performance of La Traviata was stopped mid-act because the audience in the back rows could no longer see the stage. The opera was about a woman dying of a lung disease. Nobody noted the irony at the time. Yet right there in the hospitals, the pattern emerged, not in the wards, but in the morgues. London's normal daily death rate was around 300. By Sunday, the 7th of December, it had risen to 900. The deaths were concentrated in the very young, the very old, and anyone with a prior chest condition, but not exclusively. Healthy adults in their 30s and 40s were dying of what their doctors called acute respiratory failure. Here's what was actually happening inside those bodies. The sulfuric acid particles triggered a cascade of bronchial inflammation. The airways swelled, mucus accumulated faster than the body could clear it, and the lungs, already working against a poisoned atmosphere, became unable to move air. People died the way you drown, slowly, in their own beds, overnight, without anyone watching, because the hospitals had run out of room and the ambulances had stopped running because the drivers couldn't see the road. Imagine what it meant to be a GP in Bermondsey that weekend. Your patients arriving blue-lipped, unable to breathe, no fever, no infection you could identify, no trauma. You sent them to hospital. The hospital sent more back, no beds. You called the borough health office. They called the Ministry of Health. And on Monday, the 8th of December, the ministry issued a statement noting that London was experiencing a period of foggy weather and that residents should take the usual precautions. There were no usual precautions. Nobody had written them down because nobody had admitted this could happen. The standard advice for fog was to stay indoors. The fog was already indoors, but the price of that silence was being counted in the ledgers of every London mortuary, in coffin orders that overwhelmed the city's suppliers, in florists running out of flowers for funerals that were stacking up 3 and 4 days ahead. Coal in 1952 was not just fuel, it was the economy. 700,000 people worked for the National Coal Board, nationalized just 5 years earlier as a symbol of post-war social progress. It powered the reconstruction. It heated the hospitals that were now filling with its victims. To say that coal had killed 4,000 Londoners in 5 days was to say that the entire model was lethal. So the ministry's preliminary report blamed an influenza epidemic instead. The problem was the flu figures didn't support it, not even close. E.T. Wilkins, the government's own chief pollution analyst, plotted death rates against air quality data for the following 3 months and found 8,000 additional deaths that no other variable could explain. No cold snap, no flu outbreak, no statistical noise. Total, 12,000. His report was completed. It was never formally published. The denial had a specific shape, not outright lies, but delay, recategorization, and the quiet hope that the numbers would become too old for anyone to act on. It nearly worked. It took 4 years and sustained pressure from doctors, scientists, and bereaved families before Parliament passed the Clean Air Act in 1956. Smoke-free zones, restrictions on coal burning in homes and factories, power stations pushed outside city limits. The fog thinned over the following decade. The peace supers became memory. By the 1970s, London school children had never seen one. And here we understand why the Great Smog was never really a weather event. It was a system failure. 8 million individual decisions to burn coal in a sealed valley, accumulating into something no single person intended and no government wanted to name. The fog was the symptom. The cause was invisible, distributed, and entirely ordinary. Everyone was responsible, and so, for 5 days, no one was. The air that killed 12,000 people arrived gradually, without odor, without color, and the government's first instinct was to say nothing had happened. In London today, air pollution still accounts for thousands of excess deaths each year. The sources are different, The visibility is better. The mechanisms of looking away are largely the same.